Hello everyone, welcome to another video of Into the Hive Mind. I just wanted to make this video to basically talk about my experiences and what I learned having participated in the Charity Hammer event up in Seattle, Washington last weekend. It was a absolutely incredible event where we donated a bunch of money to Child's Play and got to play a bunch of Warhammer with a bunch of incredible players. Both tactically and just incredible people to play against. I did get this very cool shirt, so quite happy to rep the event. If you're ever lucky enough to get an invite, do anything you can to be able to go. It is an absolutely incredible event, and you just make tons of friends every single time. 4 days of constant gaming. It is a 24-hour stream. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And when I say stream, I mean 3 streams going nonstop for, what is that? Not 72 hours, but 96 hours. 3 streams nonstop. Basically, I got a ton of reps in. I learned a whole bunch about the new Tyranid Codex, and I learned what people are playing right after the new balanced data slate and what people are thinking is good. So with that, just kind of wanted to talk and share with you guys what my experience was. Haven't made a video in a little bit because I've been recovering from that. I'm also going to link down below all the times that I was on stream for this event in case you guys want to go and see me play for yourselves. I'll put a timestamp as far as when I am playing as well, because like I said, these were pretty much nonstop streams, so they were uploaded to YouTube in 9 or 12 hour chunks, basically 3 to 4 games at a time. So I might be, the second game, so I'll say, hey, go to 3 hours and 5 minutes into this stream. That's me playing against so-and-so. But yeah, first off, for this event, I did fly, meaning I had a limited selection of models that I could take with me. I did check in 2 bags, so I did have at least a little bit of variety, but essentially I wanted to have 2 armies, and I wanted to be able to play the Vanguard Onslaught detachment in addition to the Synaptic Nexus detachment. The reason that I picked those 2 is because they just seemed the most competitively viable and also the most exciting to play. And as much as I wanted to play the Unending Swarm, I just, it's it's a fun list that I definitely want to try. But just between bringing that many additional models onto a plane just was not really a feasible thing. The Synaptic Nexus, especially, my list included 16 models. And that allowed me to bring a bunch more models to actually play a Vanguard Onslaught with a decent table covering force. So with that out of the way, basically what I ended up bringing to the event was a Synaptic Nexus detachment, which included, I should make sure that this is actually just readily available for you guys. So the Synaptic Nexus detachment, this was submitted for the GT. So these lists had to be submitted by, I think Saturday night before the week before the event. And what that meant is I had not played a single rep with this list or even this detachment when I submitted it. And so my list was, again, 16 models. It is Death Leaper, the Neuro Tyrant with the enhanced Flamer for 10 extra points, a Biovore, 2 Exocrine, 2 Maliceptor, 2 Neurolictor, 2 Norn Assimilators, again those are the Harpoon ones without the Invuln, a single Norn Emissary, the one with the Invuln, a Pyrovore, and 3 individual Rippers. So 16 models, triple Norn, is what I ended up going for in the Synaptic Nexus detachment. Notable things here is, again, I went for the Assimilators over the Emissaries. The internet definitely says not to do that. but I think with the Synaptic Nexus detachment and access to Armor of Contempt, the chance that they're going to get you past a 4-up anyways, when essentially you have a 0-up because of Armor of Contempt and cover, I was willing to pay the 20 extra points to actually be able to punch tanks. And the other big noticeable thing about this list is a lack of a Hive Tyrant. This list originally was two Norns with a Walking Hive Tyrant to double up Armor of Contempt. And then I realized that is literally the only thing I was bringing the Hive Tyrant for, because while Advance and Shoot on the guns was nice, it's not 100% necessary. And basically I realized that after giving him the -1 damage enhancement, for 35 more points I could just have a third Norn, and then duplicating the Armor of Contempt didn't matter, and because I just had a whole nother Norn if you killed the first one. And yeah, so I decided to go for that and just go triple Norn and essentially just be a massive stat check, see how that goes. And the answer is it went pretty well. So I guess the way I'm going to do this is I'll talk about, since I just listed off the Synaptic Nexus detachment, which I ran through the GT, I'll talk about that first and my entire GT experience, and then I'll go to my Vanguard list and how that ended up playing. And I played the Vanguard list in the Tyranid tournament as well as a couple fun games. And yeah, I'll give you guys the recap on that after the Synaptic Nexus. So my experience with this Synaptic Nexus 16 model list was round 1. I was playing against Nick Villegas, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. But I played against him and he was playing Dark Angels. And with his Dark Angels, it was what I think is turning into a pretty standard list for them. What I would imagine most Dark Angel lists is going to be moving forward is 6 aggressors with a Apothecary Biologus with the Bolter Discipline, chilling out inside of a Rhino, and basically not chilling in a Rhino, chilling in a Land Raider Redeemer, and then on top of that having 10 Deathwing Terminators and just having a massive brick. And basically Nick's list was that, but he also included a second Land Raider Redeemer for the Deathwing Knights to go inside. That meant double Land Raider is a very tough nut to crack, especially for Tyranids who lack a lot of anti-tank. And Deathwing Knights are 4 wound models with -1 damage, and 2-up Terminator saves, 4-up invuln. They're an incredibly difficult brick to shift, and they kill most things that they touch in combat. On top of that, Nick had a 10-man Hellblaster unit, which I think is also going to be reasonably standard in Marines. Not in every list, but it seems to me like they'll either have a brick of 10 Hellblasters or like 3 squads of Plasma Inceptors deep striking in and doing actions. How this game went was actually really interesting because unfortunately this game was not on stream. Of the 14 round 1 games for the GT, 5 of them could not be on the stream, and unfortunately mine was one of them, which is a bummer because it was actually one of the coolest games that I've played. Going up against double Land Raider with triple Norn was incredible. We were playing Supply Drop, so that is the mission where the objectives begin to disappear starting turn 4, and by the end of turn 5 you have a single objective that is worth 15 primary points, kind of a King of the Hill style, which means durability is king in this mission. And that played out really interestingly because basically how this game went was I did luck out and I got to go first. And basically, I just advanced 1 Norn onto every single objective, which was their singular purpose objective. So I immediately got to have my durability boost. And I got to take a pot shot with an Exocrine, I think, at a Land Raider. I don't think I did anything notable. And then, I shot it with the Exocrine and my Norn Assimilator fired some harpoons at it to get a boosted charge turn 1, and it was actually possible because it was a 9-inch charge that after hitting with the harpoons turned into a 7 because we were only the 9-inch circle in the middle, so we were only 18 inches apart from no man's land, and both of us kind of deployed on the line. So that meant that my midfield Norn assimilator moved right onto that midfield objective, shot the Land Raider, didn't do any meaningful damage, but got the +2 to charge, needed a 7, failed it, and was actually fine with that because if I'd made it, I would have stepped off the objective and lost my 5-up Feel No Pain. So I elected not to CP reroll it, and I basically just completely grabbed every single objective and said, you have to shift me. And then on Nick's turn, he tried, and he found out just how durable Norns on objectives are. I believe he took one of the Norns down to like 5-6 wounds with unloading the super aggressor brick and shooting me, but I just popped Armor of Contempt, and that meant that I still had a 3-up save against all of his bolters, even though he was AP2 ignore cover. Essentially, I don't remember if he actually ignored cover or if he just got it because he was right in my face. Either way, he was right in my face. And so yeah, I had a 3-up save against the aggressor brick, which normally would kill anything it shoots at, but with Armor of Contempt being toughness 11, so he's wounding me on 6s, I think I actually only took 5 damage from that, and then the Land Raiders shot me, and the Hellblasters couldn't get an angle on the center one, so they shot one to the side, and I think did like 5 damage to that as well. But essentially, by the end of turn 1, when he'd unloaded his entire army on me, I think I had taken a total of 11 wounds on the Norn in the center, and that was after his aggressors charged the Norn in the center as well. So he shot me and charged me, and by the end of it all, I was still alive with 5 wounds left, and I believe I'd killed 2 aggressors with the Norn's punchback, and my other Norn had taken like 5 damage from his Hellblasters. And what that meant is, on my turn, I scored the big 15 on primary because I held all 3 center objectives still, and all of a sudden, I had Neurolictors make him take a battle shock check on his Rhino that went down to the right side, and he failed it. No, he didn't even fail it. My Neuro Tyrant somehow popped off. He didn't really have any good targets to shoot because Nick was smart and kept his Hellblasters out of range. And my Exocrines and Maleceptors just obliterated his aggressor squad. And so then the Neuro Tyrant was like, well, I don't have anything to shoot except this Land Raider. And he shot it. And I just rolled really hot on the wound roll, and I rolled 4 6s. And then he failed all 4 4-ups and took 8 damage on his Land Raider from my Flamer. So that was pretty ridiculous. But between that and then my Norn Emissary, which was the one on the objective with that Land Raider, melted him, and I think did another 7 damage. So I think he only had a singular wound left, and the Norn Emissary charged it and killed it. And then meanwhile, on the other side, I had both assimilators shoot the other Land Raider, and one of them charge it, and I killed the other Land Raider. So top of 2, I picked up both Land Raiders. And I picked up his entire aggressor brick. So what that meant is he had his big Deathwing Terminator brick plus 10 Hellblasters pretty much against the world. And that turned south for him very quickly. The Deathwing Terminators did end up going after the one objective, which was the final one for the game, and he did have bottom of turn. So all he had to do was survive till the end of 5 to get 15 primary. He did end up killing both Norns that he had wounded, but the Norn in the top left objective, which is the one that lasted until the end of the game, with his Deathwing Knights, basically after the initial punch that he had, he put it down to like 7 wounds left, and then I started really damaging that Deathwing Terminator squad, and then he punched me again and put me down to like 3 wounds. And then he punched me again and put me down to 1 wound. because again, I'm just chipping away at his guys and making it where he. I also charged other guys in, forcing it where only some of his unit could actually attack the Norn. And what that resulted in is that Norn out OC'd his entire Deathwing Terminator brick the entire game. He finally killed it turn 5 to have bottom of 5, except I popped Shadow in the Warp and he failed Battle Shock because of Death Leaper, and so he was OC 0. So he finally, he did manage to kill the third Norn by turn 5, but he was Battle Shocked, so he didn't actually have any OC, and he didn't get any primary over the course of the entire game. Definitely unfortunate for him, but because of that, I ended up winning like 92-28. It was a massive blowout in score. Not indicative of how close the game actually was, because it was a super fun game, and he did manage to perform very well, but I just was able to outscore him insanely well because I got to go first and put the Norns on all the objectives and just out OC him for the entire game. After that, though, my round 2 of the GT was supposed to be versus Naj, and that's Nicholas Olsen Johnson. We just dubbed him Naj. And he was playing the new Votann. I was actually really looking forward to this. I had not played Votann in 10th edition, but Votann were obviously massively buffed in the data slate, and Naj is an incredible player. And with the new being able to pick 4 units to have +1 to hit and wound against, when I only have 16 models total in my list, being able to know that he would just get +1 to hit and wound against all 3 of my Norns plus a unit of his choice right off the bat was going to be a really interesting game. Unfortunately, Naj had he was sick with potentially COVID. I don't remember if it actually was COVID or not, but either way, he was unfortunately too sick to be able to attend. Which is a real bummer, because what ended up happening was they gave me the win, and instead I played a super fun game against Jesse's sisters. And knowing that sisters, unfortunately, are still really suffering, I decided to play the Crusher Stampede. So because the Crusher Stampede is the exact same detachment rules as his sister's army. And what that means is we got to have a lot of fun playing really terrible armies, and it actually was an incredibly fun game. Laughing, joking the entire time. Sisters actually do have some tricks. They definitely struggle into monsters. But definitely go watch that game if you want to just see a fantastic fun game. Certainly not a competitive GT level game, but a ton of fun. A lot of hilarious shit happened, and definitely worth watching. But what that meant is I then got to go on to round 3, where I was expecting to fight John Lennon, but I'd actually guessed in the bracket that John was going to lose to Josh Bagwell. Everyone told me I was wrong and that I was, ridiculous for thinking that. But having looked at the list, John was running the Vanguard detachment, and Josh Bagwell was running triple Norn. And there's literally nothing in John's Vanguard detachment that can kill even 1 Norn. So I kind of figured that if Josh just shoved all 3 Norns onto the midfield objectives, he'd just out OC John, and John could only score secondaries, and Josh would be able to score enough secondaries to still stay ahead with his massive primary lead. And that's exactly what happened, as far as I'm aware. I didn't actually see that full game. I checked in every now and again, just kind of looked at the table, but it seemed to be going exactly like I thought it would. Obviously, John is John, so there's always a way out for him, but it sounds like, he just kind of bounced and was unable to do anything. And sometimes that's the real facts of Tyranids. They really struggle at killing high toughness things. So realizing that he was going into triple Norn who could just completely out primary him, I thought he would struggle against Josh, and if he beat Josh, he would then really struggle against me because I have the exact same list. And I could play it well. Not that Josh can't play it well, certainly not at all, but basically John would have to get lucky twice. in order to beat both of us, and I just didn't think that was going to happen. And yeah, sure enough, he ended up losing to Josh Bagwell. So huge upset in the brackets with Josh Bagwell beating him. And that meant that my round 3 was essentially a mirror match. So I had triple Norn, Josh had triple Norn, and he had 3 Exocrines and a Maliceptor, and I had 2 Exocrines and 2 Maliceptors. We both had Death Leaper and double Neurolictor. It was essentially a mirror match. This game was on stream, and honestly is probably in one of my top 5 games of all time. And I've been playing the game for 15 years. Absolutely incredible, swingy game. Definitely watch it. I'll post the link below. But essentially, the Norn assimilators did manage to slightly punch harder against the Norn emissaries than they punched back, giving me a very, very tight win. Sorry, spoiler alert, but I think you guys, half of you watching, know that I actually made it to the finals. And so what that means is I did barely manage to win against Josh Bagwell in the mirror match. And so then that brought me into playing in the semifinals versus Steve Trimble and his Deathguard list. So what Steve was running was literally, they dubbed it the Rhino Rash because Deathguard. No, it was a really powerful list. 60 Plague Marines, all in Rhinos, Mortarion, and like triple Nurgling. And then, 3 of the grenade characters, so he can just dish out grenades everywhere. And then the Tallyman. Yeah, so that was his list. It was triple Nurgling, the Tallyman, 60 Plague Marines in Rhinos, and Mortarion. That was it. But against my 16 models, that was quite a bit. And basically with this game, we were playing the mission where you get 5 points per objective that you hold up to a max of 10. So you only get points for holding 2 primary objectives all game. And that actually was really important in this game. And then at the end of the game, you score 1 more time up to 15 additional. And that basically is what allowed me to get the win. So what happened with this is I knew Steve was just going to rush at me. Steve is an incredible player, but he's also not subtle at all. He plays much more of a stat check kind of style of just I shove and see if you can deal with it. And he makes lists that most people just can't deal with it. Fortunately, the Norns are durable enough that even though he picked -1 save, meaning that I only have a 3-up, which means it can't be improved by cover, he basically got a whammy of -1 save or +1 AP on all of his weapons and giving ignore cover to all of his weapons, which was huge. And yeah, so all my Norns only had a 3-up all game long, which hurt a lot. But basically what happened is he got to go first. He just rushed all 3 objectives, leaving his home objective completely unoccupied because Deathguard make him sticky anyways. And I decided to go for fixed. This was actually Ben Jurek was my roommate for the weekend, and I get home at like 3 a.m. or get to bed at 3 a.m. and he's like half passed out, and he's like, "Oh, did you win?" I'm like, "Yeah, I won." He's like, "What are you fighting next?" I'm like, "Steve and his Deathguard." "Oh, nice." And I'm like, "Should I take fixed against him?" He's like, "Yeah, take bring it down and assassinate. He's got like a shitload of characters and rhinos, right?" It's like, "Yeah, I think he does. Sounds good." And then 3 hours later at 6 a.m., I'm playing against Steve. And I decided to take fixed and bring it down and assassinate. I thought he had 6 characters. He had 4 plus Mortarion. I wasn't counting Mortarion because I knew I would never kill him. But so he did actually have less assassinate than I thought he would, but it was still enough. Steve shoved his entire army at me, and turn 1, I popped 3 rhinos and an entire Plague Marine squad, including the grenade character. And then his turn 2, he basically got everyone out, punched everything, threw grenades, threw every single grenade that he could, and completely whiffed on the grenades. He got to use the grenade strat 4 times because Mortarion plus double character, maybe only 3 times, but either way, he did a total of 3 wounds with all of his grenade strats, which he should have done at least 9 on average. So yeah, he just rolled total garbage on his grenade strats, and basically by the end of his turn 1, he had killed my Maleceptor, and then Mortarion cleaved right through a Norn Assimilator, and that's what he killed turn 1, or turn 2, and then my turn 2, I killed like 30 more Plague Marines and another Rhino, which massively reduced his firepower, and I got another Assassinate, I believe. And then I tied everyone up, so that meant no more grenade strats for the rest of the game for him. And basically it then turned into, he managed to kill... he killed my Neurotyrant and my Pyrovore on his turn 3, and seriously wounded an Assimilator, but didn't quite finish it off. And then in my turn 3, I basically killed like another 20 Plague Marines, and then basically he was down to just some scrabbling Plague Marines plus Mortarion, and Mortarion basically went through and killed a big monster a turn for the next for turn 4 and 5. But I finished off the rest of the Plague Marines, and it essentially came down to turn 5, he was, I think, 12 points behind. So if he grabbed like Capture Enemy Outpost and another secondary that he could score 5 points on, then he would win the game. Capture Enemy Outpost never showed up, and he actually had a turn of no prisoners, and that was his turn 4. He pulled no prisoners right after my turn 3, where I elected not to bring any Rippers in from Deep Strike and just let them all die, because I'm like, well, they're not scoring me any secondaries this game. They can't hold primary because I'm taking fixed with just kill stuff, and they can't score any primary. So literally the only thing these Rippers are doing is give you potential no prisoner kills. And so I just let them die, and sure enough, the very next turn he pulls no prisoners and gets a 0 on it because he didn't kill anything. And then I end up winning the game by 4 points. So if I had dropped in those 3 Rippers and he killed all 3 of them, he would have won the game. Obviously I could have put them in places that are difficult for him to kill, but was just really funny that I said, no, I think bringing him in just gives you no prisoners. And then sure enough, he pulls no prisoners and gets a 0 on it, winning me the game. Super close game. So final score was 94-90. And honestly, Steve could have won this game easily if we'd been playing a different mission, because this twice on primary, he held 3 objectives, but you could only score 2 of them. So he only scored 10 points for primary on turns where in other missions he would have scored 15. And then at the end of the game, I got to score a big 25 primary by basically just moving onto his home objective and holding 2 midfield ones. Mortarion was on my home objective. And yeah, so because of that, I got a big 25 primary at the end of 5 to win the game by 4 points. And then that brought me into the finals, where I played Ben Jurek Aeldari. Ben basically just said, screw it. Eldar are overpowered, and I know I got nerfed, but I'm just going to continue bringing the list that has been winning me games just without a Wraith Knight now. So he's running double Avatar, double Fire Prism, Night Spinner, Warp Spiders, the Farseers, still just basic meta Eldar, just without a Wraith Guard, or without the Wraith Knight. And again, he won like 3 GTs / majors in a row with this list. And yeah, he just took the Wraith Knight out of it and kept playing. And turns out it's still really, really good. Made it all the way to the finals of Charity Hammer with it. And then we're now playing Take and Hold, the most basic version of 10th edition 40k, where you just get 5 primary points for every objective you hold. Diagonal deployment, up to 3 objectives. Very simple, and I thought that was a fitting way to do the finals. And basically in this game, he got to go first. Actually kind of whiffed with most of his shooting. He didn't kill anything, which meant he couldn't teleport the Yin Karn, and on top of that, he had failed Fortune. So what that meant is I wanted to just say, okay, now it's my turn. This is the one turn I can really do damage because I have the full strength of my army and you don't have Fortune up. So I hit the send button and threw my entire army at the Avatar of Cain because I knew if I didn't kill him right now, I literally wouldn't be able to kill him in the entire game. And unfortunately, that kind of bit me in the ass because whereas he didn't kill anything turn one, he did put one Norn Assimilator down to a measly 5 wounds. And so then when I kind of threw everything forward into the Avatar to kill him, he just Overwatched, Fate died a 6, got D3 sustained hits, gets 3 hits in Overwatch with his Melta, gets 2 wounds, and I have a 6-up save. I fail them both, and he does like 15 damage to me, and I die. And I'm like, great, that's obviously terrible, especially because he had drawn Bring It Down, which he decided to hold on to, so I gave him 4 Bring It Down points in my turn. And then on top of that, I was like, well, great, now what? He died. Well, I'm still throwing the entire army at the Avatar. And after shooting everything, I had done 2 damage to the Avatar. I literally shot both, all of my Norns at him. I shot all of my Exocrines at him, all my Maleceptors at him. I shot the Neurotyrant at him. Didn't matter. I did 2 damage total in all of my shooting. But at this point I was committed and I'm like, cool, I've got a singular Norn just assimilator hanging out like 8 inches away from the Avatar, not on the objective for the Feel No Pain. So if I don't charge with him, he's just gonna die. And if I do charge with him, at least I get to punch the Avatar before I die. So I elected to charge with him and I made it. I made the charge and punched the Avatar, and I think I did 3 more damage from the Norn Assimilator, which again is the anti-tank one that I'm paying 20 extra points and losing an invuln to get anti-tank weapons. And I did 3 whole damage to the Avatar. The Avatar then, of course, punched me back and one-shot me. So I ended up losing both Norns on my turn 1, giving him 8 Bring It Down points. And boy, was that a great way to start off that game. From that point on, I actually did explode, and I think I did 3 more damage to the Avatar in the explosion, which was pretty cool, because that meant that the Avatar was now down to like 5, whereas he would have been at 8 if I hadn't exploded. And 8 he's definitely still completely unkillable as long as he gets Fortune off. At 5, I can maybe get lucky with some of my 3 damage shooting and kill him. Unfortunately, I didn't. And basically, the game devolved into... He actually did have a really hard time killing the Norn Emissary because I just kept rolling 4-up invulns and CP re-rolling the ones that failed against Fire Prisms. But the Avatar basically just walked through killing a monster every single turn. The Yin Karn actually was kind of whiffing against me. It was good at killing like the Lictors and stuff, but it didn't kill any of the big stuff. But the Avatar was doing that, so it didn't really matter. And yeah, the game, like, I put up a fight, but it was never really enough of a fight to even be in question of if I was going to win the game. So the final blow was the the Autarch Wayleaper comes forward, and the Norn, who has been passing his invulns against Fire Prisms the entire game, he fires his 1 Melta pistol and does 8 damage and just finishes off the Norn in a single shot, whereas it had been eating Fire Prisms for 3 turns. So that was kind of funny, but unfortunately that was the demise of the last Norn, and I really had nothing left to compete. The final thing that happened was my Maleceptor in combat with the Yin Karn fell back, used a CP to shoot and charge, shot the Avatar, finished off the last 2 wounds that it had, killed it, charged back into the Yin Karn, punched it, and he basically had a 4-up invuln to see if the Yin Karn lived or died. Unfortunately, he made it, so the Yin Karn lived. But the Maleceptor very nearly bottom of 5 killed both Avatars. Unfortunately, it didn't, and I was tabled and lost the game quite spectacularly. But was a awesome event all the same. Just turns out Eldar are still really good, especially against big monsters. So, yeah, that was my experience with the Synaptic Nexus. I loved the list. I'd never played only 16 models with Tyranids before, so I was really concerned about it, but it worked really well. It just stat checked a bunch of opponents, and it had just enough tools against the opponents that it didn't stat check that I could still play the game and pull out a win. So that was my experience with the GT. Now let's talk about the Vanguard list that I ran. So the Vanguard was, let's see if I can find, unfortunately I think I changed, yeah. I'm going to have to do this from memory because I changed the list because unfortunately the list was bad. My first experience with the Vanguard, so essentially what I was running was, I don't own any Von Ryans. Like I have the one set from the Leviathan starter box of 3, and that's not really worth running. So I thought about running, 18 Von Ryans, and I'm just like, I don't own those, and I'm not going to be able to get them in any meaningful way before Charity Hammer. So instead of running 18 Von Ryans, I decided to run 30 Gene Stealers, telling myself that they're roughly equivalent. They're strength 4, AP 2, reroll 1s to wound instead of strength 5, AP 1. Seems roughly the same. You get 40 attacks instead of 36, but you hit on 2s rerolling 1s instead of hitting on 3s. That seems better, right? Yeah, I think they are actually very equivalent. Unfortunately, neither of them do any damage at all. And they're equivalent in both being terrible. So, yeah, that's... I ran 30 Gene Stealers. I had a Flying Hive Tyrant. I did have one Norn Assimilator that essentially I would throw an outflank and be able to outflank turn 1 using the Seeded Broods stratagem. And that was actually, that's a cool little tech piece that the Vanguard can do, is outflank turn 1, shoot a monster or vehicle, get a 7-inch charge from Deep Strike turn 1, or, outflank. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out. I did actually play a practice game versus Josh Bagwell before the event began, where I played this Vanguard list against his triple Norn list. And in that game, it was hilarious, because again, we were playing supply drop with the disappearing objectives. And my Norn Assimilator, Josh got to go first. Obviously, I picked the objective that was going to be the one that sticks around till the end of the game with my one guy. He picked 1-1-1 with his 3 Norns, which makes sense. And he got first turn, put his Norns on all 3 objectives. My turn 1, I outflanked the Assimilator, shoot his Emissary, do a little bit of damage, then make the 7-inch charge from reserve, punch the Norn, and I think I put it down to like 6 wounds. And then on his turn, he's like, well, I could fall back, but that doesn't really do anything for me. So he elected to stay, and that meant that in his turn, my Norn punched him again and killed him. And then the objectives started disappearing. So his Norn started walking over from the ones that disappeared to my Assimilator, and he was like, cool, you don't have a Feel No Pain anymore, I do, and I'm better at punching. And he just punched and killed one, and then punched and killed another. And so my one Norn Assimilator killed all 3 of his Norn emissaries in that game, and it was pretty entertaining. So I very handily won that game with my Vanguard detachment, but it literally just came down to, because the objectives were disappearing, he just had to throw all 3 emissaries into combat with the Assimilator, and the Assimilator is just way better in combat. But yeah, the other thing I was running in the Vanguard list was 9 Pyrovores on in 3 squads of 3, basically just outflanking them and being like, hey, a ton of shots at strength 6, AP 1 for 1, ignore cover, twin linked is really good. And it is really good. However, now that they are on 80 mil bases, getting them to outflank is actually basically impossible. They need a massive footprint to be able to fit. And on top of that, even if they do fit, there's probably going to be a building in the way for one of them because they're just that big of a footprint. That was my experience. I never got to actually shoot all 3 at the same target, and they way the terrain was set up meant that the pyrovores, basically the front quarter of their base would be touching the terrain because they just had to. When I'm outflanking off the edge, their bases were just that big. So it meant I couldn't see through the buildings because I could only get 6 inches on the table, and that didn't put me wholly within the terrain. But everyone could see me because I was too big to hide behind the terrain. It was really inconvenient and basically just made it where I was taking 270 points of absolutely nothing. And that on top of the, 510 points of Gene Stealers that I was taking that were also doing nothing. And then the Assimilator maybe was doing something if it made its charge, but that's just one guy. Unfortunately, my Vanguard list, I was also running triple Lictor, triple Neurolictor, and Death Leaper. I do think you run triple Neurolictor in every single list. They are just that good. And Death Leaper probably also in every single list. He is just that good. But my experience with the Vanguard, the practice game was super fun with it, but it was just the Assimilator being an all-star, and nothing else really mattered that game. And then my first game with it for real was against John Lennon in the Bug Face-Off tournament, and John Lennon was playing the Synaptic Nexus, where he had double Maliceptor, double Exocrine, the Super Flamer Neuro Tyrant, and a Walking Tyrant, and I think 9 Zoanthropes, maybe 12. 9 or 12 Zoanthropes. I know he had one big 6-man and a 3-man, and maybe another 3-man. But either way, John got to go first, and he just shoved up the middle with his entire Death Star, and basically then put Spore Mines or something else to screen the edges. It was Spore Mine on one side and Exocrine on the other side. And what that meant is I just couldn't outflank anywhere because he got to go first and just took the sides, and then shoved his main army in the middle. Knowing that that was probably going to be the case, I started the Assimilator on the table, and I was just like, well, let's see if I can stat check him with the 1 Norn Assimilator, park it on the center objective where he gets the 5-up Feel No Pain. And John just kind of laughed and blew it to smithereens in a single turn with only like 2 units. I think it was just the 6-man Zoanthropes plus a 3-man Zoanthropes, and all right, he's dead. And that left the rest of his guys to shoot my Flying Hive Tyrant, and he killed that too. And then I brought in all my Pyrovores from reserve, except not where I wanted them to because they were giant. And they did basically absolutely nothing, and then John obliterated them, and my Gene Stealers charged stuff, but he's toughness 10 pretty much everywhere, so I did nothing, and then he just killed them, and yep, that was the game. And then the next day, John got to experience the same thing in reverse when he ran the Vanguard into the Synaptic Detachment of Josh Bagwell. So unfortunately, the lesson there is if you just take the Vanguard stuff, you're going to lose because you have no damage. And the units that want the Vanguard keyword and want to be in the Vanguard detachment, they don't do damage. So what that means is, I think moving forward, a Vanguard detachment is still really good. You just have to know exactly what you're doing. Because I think what you end up doing is you write a list that is based entirely on the Neurolictors getting +1 to wound and the stratagem to just battle shock your opponent over and over and over again. So you have a Walking Tyrant or a Flying Hive Tyrant to make sure that you are using the battle tactic strat to make your opponent take a battle shock check. And as soon as they fail, then you take your Vanguard unit that's been waiting there with advance and charge behind a wall. It's finally, hey, they failed battle shock, it's go time. Put a Neurolictor within 12, put a combat unit into it, pick that unit up. And I think that's the way that you have to play a Vanguard now, is that, and then you use your CP just to save the 1 unit that you launched into the opponent. So you probably want 3 CP to be able to move back 6 inches and then make yourself lone op. And then basically prep for next turn. And so you're using your free strat to battle shock your opponent in your turn and your opponent's turn. And then as soon as they fail one, send the missile, kill the unit, bring the missile back. I think that is the way to play the Vanguard detachment now. I have yet to actually do it in practice, but I would love, that's the next thing I want to try. I'd love to do it. And yeah, unfortunately, that was my experience with the Vanguard. I then had a fun game against Kasra and his Ultramarines that I was like, okay, maybe that was just John Lennon and I bounced against the stat check. Let's try playing Kasra's Ultramarines with the exact same Vanguard list. And it was the exact same result. I couldn't kill anything, and he just instantly picked up everything. The Pyrovores still couldn't get to shoot anything that they wanted to shoot, and the game just ended very quickly. The Norn Assimilator, I did outflank in this one, and he went up against a Brutalis. No, whatever the new missile dreadnought. That's not the Brutalis, but the missile version of the Brutalis. So I outflanked in his deployment zone turn 2 with the CP, shot the Dreadnought, hit the Dreadnought, did like 2 damage, failed the 7-inch charge with the reroll, so just sat there and Caster just blew it to pieces, which is bound to happen, 1 out of every 3 games, I would imagine. So yeah, unfortunately, that Vanguard detachment just didn't work at all. Gene Stealers don't do damage. They're really good against Guard and Eldar, which everything is good at killing Guard and Infantry Eldar. So, yep, that was my experience. I think you take melee warriors as your slingshot unit, and basically just send them out there with a winged prime, punch something, kill it, run it back. And just rinse and repeat, hope your opponent fails a bunch of battle shocks and that you're not fighting, leadership 5. Yeah, I'll put timestamps down below and link in the battle reports if you guys want to see any of them. Again, the top ones for me, aside from the finals and semifinals, obviously were great games. Unfortunately, the one versus Nick wasn't streamed, but that was also a fantastic game. And then I'll link my fun game against Kasra and I don't know if you guys want to see that, but I'll show you guys the Vanguard if you want to watch me just bounce. But against Kasra and John Lennon, fun games. But the ones really to watch are versus Josh Bagwell and versus in the mirror match, and versus Jesse with his sisters was just a super fun game. So watch those for sure. And if you want to watch the rest, be my guest. I will certainly link them in the description. I'm going to go back to writing lists for each detachment. I kind of stopped halfway because Charity Hammer got right in the middle, plus the balance slate dropped and changed the points of all the videos that I had just released. So probably just going to have to start all over with that. But it's fine. I've got a ton of new insight. Happy to go over it all again. And if you've watched this far, thank you so much. I will see you all in the next video.